So it's 1 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. I just want to welcome everybody here. I'm Amy Catania. I'm the Executive Director here at Historic Saranac Lake. We have various digital things going on today. We have some people watching by Zoom. We have our historic preservation architects on cell phone to call in. So we'll do the best we can, making sure everybody gets heard and gets a chance to ask questions and stuff. But we're excited to get started on this project. This is, for us, a big expansion of our museum here. So we own this building, the Saranac Laboratory. A couple of years ago, we purchased the Trudeau building next door. It was built the same year as this building, 1894, by the same person. So that was Dr. Trudeau's home and medical office, and this was his laboratory. And both buildings were on the same deed for a real long time. For us, when the building came up for sale, it was a natural thing for us to do to purchase the building and expand into it. Has a lot of work to do to get to that point though. So this is the first phase, really getting the exterior construction going. So we're really excited about it. And I just want to introduce the folks that we're working with. So we have Harry Gordon is our lead architect. He's done an excellent job getting us to this place. We're very excited. So Harry will be sort of leading the presentation today and walking us around the building, answering any questions. We also have Tim Northrop, who's with Northwoods Engineering, a local firm here that's been doing a lot of the planning with us. Tim is here to talk particularly about the structural work that needs to get done, and is going to be helping a little bit with some of the construction management on the project too. So we're really glad to have him on the team. And then on the phone, people you can't see are Kim and Jack Alvarez. They're from Landmark Consulting in Albany, and they're our historic preservation consultants. So that's an important part of this project, is a National Register listed building, and we are an architectural historic preservation organization, so it's an important part of that for us too. Anything else you want me to say to get started? I actually just want to mention to the people on Zoom, if they haven't heard already, you guys on Zoom won't have a chance to ask any questions verbally because we have you muted. To avoid feedback, but if you want to type a comment or a question in the box, Chessie will be reading those out here, and then at the end, you'll have a chance, we'll address your questions. And I think that's just about it. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Gary.
Thank you. So I think everybody's had a chance to sign in on the sheet, and folks who are on Zoom have already connected as well. In our meeting here inside, we're going to go over the first few topics on the agenda, the general description of the scope and the fact that the building will be occupied and administrative requirements. We want to spend most of the time walking around the site so that you have a better sense of how the building lays out and what the elements of the construction are. So that'll be where we spend most of our time. But let's begin with general description of the scope. And, Kim and Jack Alvarez are on the phone. I would like, if they could, to ask them to speak to the historic significance of the Trudeau building and the fact that the Secretary of the Interior's standards for restoration are important to this. Kim and Jack, can you hear me?
And some of these things to try and bring back up Porch Street Historic District, so it is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. And some of this project is funded in part by the State Historic Preservation Office. So we are following what are called the Secretary of Interior standards for historic preservation. It's kind of like the Ten Commandments of do no harm if and when possible. If you follow the construction documents, there should be no worry about doing any harm to the building, only actually improving it. So with that, that's the good of our summary.
Great, thank you, Kim. So let's go over the major elements of the exterior restoration. As Kim said, this work is really the outside of the building. We have the opportunity to restore the outside of the building to something that is very close to what it was during Dr. Trudeau's lifetime. The interior has been more compromised. That's really not part of the scope for today. But we wanted you to understand that this is part of a bigger project. So that's why the drawings show some work that's not in this contract, but will be in future contracts. So the major pieces, Kim just mentioned this in her introduction, a removal of the vinyl siding. The vinyl siding was put in place of the original Western red cedar siding that was on the building. We have good photographic evidence of that. We know what was there. We've done some amount of removal of the vinyl siding to be able to understand what's underneath. That's reflected in the construction documents. Obviously, we couldn't look everywhere, but we have a pretty good idea of what's beneath the vinyl, and that's represented on the drawings. I know everybody's very aware of the fact that the construction sequence is very busy this year. And one of the things that I want to point out is that the Western red cedar, which is one of the items that is important in this project, that will be the replacement siding to match what was there originally, is probably a long lead item. So please be aware of that as you're thinking about how you sequence this and schedule it. And all of the siding and trim needs to be fully primed before it's installed. So that's another step in the process we want you to just generally be aware of. Second item is the preparation and painting of the exterior painted wood trim. There's a lot of wood trim on this building, and it's original. Everything that we can see is part of the original fabric. So therefore, we want to restore it. It's been painted many times, and so the specifications call for a process to be able to take that paint down to a sound substrate that's suitable for repainting. So if you're looking at the construction documents, be aware of that element of the specifications, please. Third element is the restoration of the Main Street portico entrance, and that has some related structural elements. So right now, as you'll see as we walk around the building, there is a gable roof over a brick porch that's not original. We want to be able to take those off and go back to what was an original semi-cylindrical portico, which you'll see on the drawings. Related to that, and I'm going to ask Tim to speak to this for a moment, there are some structural repairs that can best be made when the front of the building is being opened up to take off the existing porch and put on the new portico. Those repairs are partially underneath the first floor. And Tim, would you speak to that for a moment?
Sure. So at that corner of Main and Church, next to the portico, there's some evidence of some rotten timber sills that we're calling for to be replaced that are right in the vicinity of the portico, as well as reconstruction of the stone masonry foundation at that corner of the building. Further inside in the crawl space, which is one of the only interior structural items, is there's a number of 8x8 original timbers for the first floor framing that are severely checked and notched that we're looking to reinforce with some solid plate steel, as well as replacement of a existing stone, basically just stone foundation inside with cast in place square footings. The remainder of the structural items are outside the building with, obviously the portico, as Harry mentioned, the construction of that and the new entrances and porches that are shown around the perimeter of the building.
Great, thanks, Jim. Number 4 on the list is the restoration of the west cure porch and the porch below. So Dr. Trudeau unfortunately was himself suffering from tuberculosis during his lifetime. And so the cure porch, in fact, 2 cure porches were constructed on the original building so that he would have the opportunity to try to cure himself of the tuberculosis. Those cure porches are very important historically, but they've been significantly modified over time. The West Cure Porch, which is what we're talking about now, is the one that faces the hotel. And that one has a very substantial amount of work that needs to be done to bring it back to its original condition. There's another cure porch on the south side, which was also Dr. Trudeau's cure porch, and that one has a significant amount of work, but not as much as the West Cure Porch. So we'll talk about this as we walk around in the field. Number 5 is the reconstruction of a porch on the south side of the building. That's the side that's closest to where we are here in the lab. We found this, some photographic evidence of this, and Landmark Consulting was able to reconstruct what was probably there as an original porch. So we'll see that on the drawings, and we'll talk about that when we're out in the field. Number 6 is the restoration of the south cure porch. That's on the 2nd floor, right above the part of the original portion of the building, and that will be restored. Number 7 is a non-historic entrance. The southeast wing of this building was not historic. Everything else in the 2-story portion and the doctor's wing, we'll talk about as we go around, are very important historically. The southeast wing was constructed in the 1960s, more or less, and it's a different form of construction, and it's not important historically, but it is important to the building. And so we're in number 7, we're going to create a new non-historic entrance on that side. And then number 8 on our list is structural repairs to the some damaged rafters in the attic. Tim, you might speak to that if you can.
Sure. Yeah. Upstairs in the attic, there was looked like a very contained fire a number of years ago, which was partially repaired at the time. But there's the existing rafter and hip beams are heavily charred and fire damaged, and you want to take the opportunity to reinforce those areas. To do that, likely going to have some temporary supports that are going to need to go in to reframe that area and reinforce. And I don't know if you think we'll get up there and take a look at the walkthrough, or are we staying outside?
I think we can get it.
Okay.
Take a look at that today.
It's a fairly confined, small area.
You'll find this on the structural portion of the construction documents on S2.04. Those are the major pieces of this phase of the project. There are some other ancillary things, but those are the big ones. And so let me stop for just a second there and ask if any of you have questions that you want to ask before we move on to the next item in the agenda.
No questions on the computer. So.
Thanks. So as I mentioned earlier, this is the first phase of construction. There are future phases that are not in the contract that are somewhat shown on the drawings. The drawings are not complete for the next phase, but a lot of the material is there, so you'll understand where it is we're going with the next phase of construction. We thought it was important for you to understand where we're headed in the bigger picture, but most of the work on the interior, with exceptions that we've just discussed, are not in this contract. So we'll move on now to the fact that the building is going to be occupied partially by historic Saranac Lake and by the tenants. There are some tenants that are in the building. And here we basically want to just make you aware of that. We want to ask you to minimize conflicts of the users of the building and make sure that they're able to access the building properly. It's important that we maintain means of egress for the people who are in the building. When we're doing the Portico, for example, which is one of the main means of egress now, have alternative ways for people who are in that portion of the building to safely exit in case of an emergency. Also, some of the activities that you'll be undertaking are dust creating activities, kind of inevitable. And so dust barriers, dust partitions are all part of specifications. We want you to be able to maintain those so that the portions of the building that remain occupied are safe for the people who are using it. Amy, would you like to add anything to that portion?
No, I don't think so. I think that's good.
Okay, so we'll next talk about the administrative requirements. And Amy, I'm going to ask if you will cover the first one, which is the New York State grant requirements.
Yeah, so this project has 3 different grants. And we have worked out with the different agencies sort of a schedule for how to manage those grants. The first is a State Office of Historic Preservation, EPF grant. There's a relatively small amount of money left in that grant because most of it was used to acquire the building. We're going to try to use that first. And that grant has its own requirement for the minority and women-owned businesses. So that's 5% and 5%. We've actually already met the women-owned business requirement through that grant, through the contractors we've already worked with. And the minority business, we've made a pretty decent effort on that one, which is great. And the way I've been seeing this is it's really our job to show that we're making a good faith effort in reaching out, and we're documenting that, and we've been very diligent with that. So we can show the state that we've made a good effort. And if we need to apply for a waiver, we can do that. So that's, they want to see that we're doing everything we can to fulfill those requirements, but there is a possibility, there is the option of applying for a waiver if we're unable to meet those goals. So that's the first grant. And then the second grant is a downtown revitalization initiative grant of $325,000. The goals for that one is 10% and 10%. But the same thing applies as long as we show that we're reaching out. You need to show us that you have a plan, or it's in the bid documents. There's a form to fill out that shows that you've at least thought about it and tried to figure out a way to fulfill those percentages. But again, we can apply for whatever we need to. And I think that's about all that we need to say about that.
Okay. The other administrative requirements are pretty straightforward. The bid form is in the project manual. It consists of a base bid that has a lump sum for the overall construction, a field change allowance, and a unit price for repointing the stone foundations, which are, as you'll see, they're somewhat deteriorated, so we want to be able to repoint those. There also are 2 alternatives in the bid form. They both have to do with copper roofing on portions of the building. They're clearly called out in the drawings, and we'll talk about them when we're in the field. I want to remind you that in your proposal, we'd like to have a preliminary schedule on project approach. There's a form for that in the project manual, and that's part of what we're asking for as your bid response. And then finally, administratively, the project will be run using the AIA 201 general conditions. That includes payments using scheduled values, applications for payment, and waiver of liens. So all of those elements will be part of what we will ask you to do as we work together on the project. So that's kind of our inside part. We'd like to go outside, but are there any questions that we could respond to before we take a tour of the building?
You mentioned that you're asking for some kind of schedule from us. Is there any type of completion date or anything within the contract document?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get the last question.
Is there any sort of completion date within the contract document or rough schedule?
We don't have that in the contract documents. We thought it would be better for you to propose that to us,
Okay.
because you're more aware of the conditions of construction that are prevalent today.
Okay. Is there a bid bond required?
There is not a bid bond required.
Okay. And then who do you send RFIs to?
RFIs confirm the historic Saranac Lake, and then we will respond to them, depending on who's the best person to respond to that particular question. So it might be Tim if it's a structural RFI, or it might be me if it was architectural, or if it's a historic preservation, it would be landmark.
Okay, and that would be the email that was provided in the advertisement for bids, we would add on that. Something.
That's a good start. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll fill it out from there.
Okay, thank you.
Is there a schedule for prevailing wage or anything, because it's federal or state money or no?
Not a prevailing wage project. No, it's state funding, but it's not like a school project where you would have a department.
Okay.
As far as the schedule goes, I would just like to, pointing out the building season and its exterior work. We would hope that we could see this phase completed by the time the snow falls. That would be ideal for us, so.
There's, a fair amount of work that involves painting and other things that are temperature dependent. Okay. Kim or Jack, is there anything that you'd like to add at this point?
No, you covered it. Well, one thing that I think that in the bid document, there's also a qualification for,
You're right.
so Harry, you can talk to that.
Thank you, Kim. Yes, there is a qualification form. We want to know that your firms have had experience in working on projects like this. And so the qualification form speaks to your experience in working on historic projects and all of the specific requirements that are associated with those. So please don't miss that. It's in the front end of the bid documents, and it's an important part of the proposal response.
Harry, before we go over next door, I need to switch to mobile, so I'm gonna do that if you're good.
Yes, unless are there any chat box questions?
Nope.
Okay. Then yes, we can,
Okay, so hold on one second.
Too bad. Not yourself.
I don't know, I want to.
kind of close because it's hard to hear here as the cars are going by. All right, Harry, so I'm streaming for everyone on Zoom, so you'll have to yell at me a bit. We tested it yesterday and it sounds pretty good, but Adam's on the line in case something goes wrong, so.
The first element of the construction on our list is the removal of the vinyl siding and the replacement with painted wood siding. You can see that, you'll see as we walk around the building, virtually all of the original siding was taken off. There are a couple of places where it still remains, so we know exactly what it looked like, and we have a piece that is a profile. When you're creating the siding to replace what was here originally, you can use that profile to get exactly the proportions that we want. So that sample will be available to you. Generally, beneath the siding, there's the tracks, of course, for the vinyl siding. There's about a 1/2 inch layer of foam insulation and house wrap that's placed over the original wood sheet. So the house wrap and the foam, and of course the siding come off, and the drawings show what goes back in place of that. This, you can see on this side of the building in particular, the trim around the windows and doors. As I said, that's all original. You can also see from here that there's quite a number of layers of paint on that trim, and so getting that paint off safely and getting down to a good surface that's suitable for repainting is an important element. Let's talk a little bit about the portico. The door that you see here is the original door to the building, and the trim around it and the entablature are also original. The windows that are on each side of that door are not original, and but we do have the original windows that were in that place. They're actually quite beautiful. They have the upper portion has a metal oval, and we have both of those original windows. So our goal here is to put them back in place. Those windows will be restored by a specialty contractor working directly with Historic Saranac Lake, and then they'll be provided to you for installation. All the remaining windows that are in the scope of work in the contract documents will be work that you direct as a general contractor, having your subcontractor do the creation of those custom windows. So just those two windows are the ones that we will restore and provide to you for installation. We're going to issue an addendum to cover that because we think that might not have been as clear as we would like it to be in the bidding documents. And so we know that there'll be an addendum coming out covering that and probably a couple of other items as well. Tim, maybe you would talk a little bit about some of the structural elements of replacing the portico and also some of the repairs to the foundation.
Sure. And so basically everything you see here, as far as this gable addition, will be removed, including any of the foundation that it's on. The new foundation is radius frost wall with the brick shelf. You'll see the detailing for that. There's a slab on grade. And then essentially the portico structure is self-supporting, independent of the main structure. So it's basically self-supporting. See that we've got some radius steel at the top to form the perimeter of the roof framing, and then the rest is all standard wood. This corner of the foundation, you'll see in the crawl space is undergone some deterioration from the inside. The inside corner is somewhat collapsed. So the goal is to stabilize and rebuild that corner as necessary to make sure we're on solid footing here. And you'll see on the site drawings that a number of these trees will be coming down, and with that in this area, we're looking to regrade as we can to try to limit the amount of water that's pooling in this area. That's what is the root cause of what we've got going on here. That's about it for the portico area.
The other thing that's important while we're doing the portico is, Tim mentioned earlier that there are some structural repairs to the first floor framing. There's some 8x8s that are damaged and some other elements that need work. Probably in terms of the sequence of the work, it's going to be easiest to get access to those repairs from when you're doing the portico work. We're not going to tell you about the sequence of construction. That's of course up to you. It's also accessible from the interior. There is a crawl space that has a reasonable workable height, and that would be another way of approaching it. But we do want those structural repairs to the floor framing to be done as part of this overall construction. Anything else to add there? Nope.
Gary, we got a question in the chat if you want to answer it now.
Yes, sure.
Can a sketch indicating the exact profile with dimensions of the siding be issued? We will need to know this to obtain material pricing.
Yes, on the drawings, there is a profile drawn at full scale of what the siding was and what it will be.
Okay.
All right, let's walk around toward the hotel side, and we'll talk about some of the work that happens on the west side. I didn't have a problem with that. One of the big elements on this side of the building is the restoration of the porches on both the first and second floor. Well, originally, this portion on the first floor, which is closed currently, was an open porch. Because this was a medical office building for many years, the porch was enclosed over time and became offices, but we want to restore it back to its original condition as an open porch. That's pretty clearly detailed on the drawings, but of course there'll be some demolition in order to be able to get back to something that will allow you to do the reconstruction. Above that is what was called Dr. Trudeau's cure porch. It's actually his second cure porch. We'll see the first one in a few minutes. It didn't look exactly like it does today. It's been modified over time as a result of some of the operations of the medical office building. And so on the drawings, you'll see that this portion that cantilevers out this way, that portion gets removed, and the remaining portion that's closer to the building gets restored. There's quite a bit of detail on the drawings about this because we know a fair amount about what was there originally, and our goal is to bring it back to the way it was during Dr. Trudeau's lifetime. This wasn't part of the original construction, but because, as I said, Dr. Trudeau suffered from TB, this was a very important element in terms of how he was treating both himself and also treating his patients.
Yeah. Placing it
being the line of footings that are going in. We have some rotted space in this column, so we're replacing and providing new foundation underneath this point. So as this is supporting the portion of the porch that will remain, some temporary flooring support to that one. And just to kind of continue with Gary, so all the CMU down here you can see was the addition. It goes into a little bit of casting place. So that's all being removed to open air space with new individual pier foundations and post support going on.
Also on this side, this porch that leads up to that door comes off. Window goes in place of the door, and the door gets moved to another location that's shown on the drawings. There are quite a bit of modifications to just this portion of the west side of the building. Questions about this part? Now let's keep walking around and we'll talk about some of the other ones. On the drawings, we show two alternates for copper roofing. One of them is on the upper roof over the pier porch on the second floor. The second place where we have copper roofing is on some of these first floor roofs. They're pretty clearly shown on the drawings. So those are the two alternatives that are the two alternates rather that are in the bidding documents. Portion of the building that you see going south, which is a one-story portion. When Dr. Trudeau famous for the fact that he was one of the only people that had any idea how to treat tuberculosis, so people would come treated by him. And the addition was put onto the original two-story building that was his medical office. So that was where he would see patients. That's everything that you see. It's in a one-story configuration here. It was contemporaneous with the construction of the original two-story building, or at least within a year or two. So it's as important to us historically as the two-story portion. We treat it all as being very important to us from a historic perspective. Tim, maybe you'll speak to the foundation and some of the reporting while we're here.
Sure. Start the foundation, which wraps around the entire perimeter of the building. So we have called out as a unit price item, 400 square feet of repointing. You can see it's been patched and touched up at various times over the life of the foundation. So let's just get that secured up and protect it for the future from further water damage and get everything tight. So the 400 square feet was estimated at about 75% of the surface area of the foundation around the perimeter. So the majority of it.
Since it's a unit price in the bidding documents, Tim will help to determine the actual square footage when you're here in the field. That gives you the opportunity to enter a price in the bidding documents. Okay, walking around. You can probably see if you look at the roof form here, this vestibule and outside porch, basically here out. Those were added later. They're not historic, but we do know what was there originally because we have some photographs. So the construction documents show the porch that we're going to put back, which is a restoration of the porch, or replication, I should say, in this case, of the porch that was there originally. So that will start with the vestibule and the outside porch come off, and it will extend across this wing of the building. If you look down here at the end of the alley on the second floor, you can see a screened area that is Dr. Trudeau's first cure porch. It's pretty small. I think maybe it was too small for him to really use well, and so that's why the one that we discussed on the west side was built later. This one's important because it was his first attempt at having an outside space to be able to cure himself. It's been modified a substantial amount over time, but the drawings show us taking it back to the condition that we know existed originally. We have pretty good photographs of that. So the screen will come off and some of the other elements will go back to the condition that they were in originally. You'll see as we walk around the building, many full wall air conditioners. There's one that's just over those windows on the first floor. Most of them are put in a way that doesn't damage historic fabric. The one that's over those two windows does. So restoration of those, of the trim around those windows is important. But for the most part, what you're going to find on the drawings is that we've identified all of the through wall air conditioners. And so those are all coming out. And our drawings show how we want you to restore or patch back what was there originally. Also over here, this portion of the concrete block foundation will be parged down on the construction documents. This portion does not get modified, so it will be parged to have a good finish. This portion of the building that we're looking at now is the part that I mentioned was a non-historic later addition done sometime in the 20th century. And so the form of construction is different. It's not the same original wood sheeting that you find at the historic porches. These two windows on the left are removed, and we have created a new, or will create a new exterior entrance so that this portion of the building can be leased independently to tenants. And this will be their access to be able to come into that portion of the building. We're also showing the drawings that we'd like you to make replacement of the metal stairs that go down to the cellar. The cellar is accessible not from the interior of the building at this point, but through this hatchway, and you probably saw another one back in the alley. Those are the two ways that the building is accessible at the basement level. That'll be important to you when you're when you're running wiring for the exterior lighting that is shown on the drawings at the various entrances. That'll be your access point and your way in which you can distribute the wiring.
We can get to the crawl spaces from here.
Yes, okay. It's the portion that's right here is full height. The addition on the southeast is crawl space, and then a portion of the original building is built over a crawl space as well.
Okay.
There is a pretty substantial amount of full height basement. That's where the mechanical system is located and also where the electrical system is. I think I'm going to go in and look at the structural work in the attic. But the last thing I want to point out on the exterior is our drawings show that this vestibule and porch come off the building. They were not original. We built it sometime later. The sidewalks also come out, and we're going to ask you to restore the wall and replace the original wood siding that was there. There was not a window or a door where the vestibule is, so we go back to being an opaque wall.
There's also some structural damage. This entrance.
Sorry,
where
can
a lot
you-
of damage has occurred.
Can you say that again? I don't think, because the truck.
Oh, there's some structural damage in the wall, so to the base of the studs and the sill plate, or sill beam rather, in this area, as you take this porch off as well.
Okay, that pretty much covers the outside of the building. Last thing we want to show you is to take you up to the attic so you can see the structural repairs to the rafters. Before we go in, are there any questions that we could help you answer? So,
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh, yep, yeah. So you might want to talk about the new roof structure over the new entrance. Made at the Portico?
No, this
or
one.
Here at the side entrance. At the tenant entrance.
Here.
so see on the drawings that where we have this new entrance to the tenant portion of the building. I thought we've designed a peppered porch and steps leading down to grade that integrate with the hip roof that is on the building now. We'll want to, as closely as we can, match the shingles that are on the building. We'll want your help in evaluating those and determining the best approach. But our drawings show some what we think are starting and stopping points with the new roofing and the extension of that roofing out.
Even I get lost in this building.
Yeah.
You gotta go on this side so we can
Yeah,
pull
we
the.
gotta go on this side.
We have everybody?
another person?
No.
Nope.
You left? Oh. Good thing.
This is where we make you sign a waiver.
I was gonna say, we all going into the attic.
Very sturdy up there, but this rickety part is this. If you want to see the rafters, that's.
So go up.
Or I can take it off if you want.
No, it's fine. You guys can go ahead. I hate these stairs. Okay, I'm gonna turn my video off for 1 sec while I go up to the attic. Ugh. Not cold up here.
So you see here that got pretty significant charring, but actually quite a bit of good wood left. So the approach that we're using is maintaining what is there, cleaning everything up, and then sistering additional members. I forget the exact distance past the extent of the charring, but to do that, obviously, on the hip beams, we'll need to cut back the rafters. So we'll need to provide some temporary support to do that. And so that's the general approach. So it's just confined to this this small area here. So we're leaving all the sheeting and decking.
I can't believe they just went over that.
It's going to remain. Yep. Yep. We left it,
Would have been a lot easier at that point.
Yep. So that's the
Okay.
the extent of that.
I don't have any questions on the chat here, so you guys are good.
One thing we didn't mention, but you might have noticed as we were walking around the building, all of the outside windows, with a few exceptions, are replacement windows. So they're not historic, but they're also not in scope. We're not asking you to do anything with them. They're weather shield windows that were put in place roughly 20 years ago, metal clad. We wish the historic windows were still there, but they're not, and we can't really bring them back. So as you're working, you'll find that the historic trim is there, but that the windows are in fact newer. And as I said, we're not asking you to do any work with those windows. Okay, we could probably go down, and then the last thing would be to talk about the construction site access.
Okay, I'm going to, for those of you on Zoom, I'm going to turn off my video again, so you don't have to watch me fall down the stairs. We'll be back in a second. Okay, we're back.
Hold this up, Harry. I got it.
In case you were wondering, in a future phase of construction, this is going to get replaced.
Okay. Full feature.
We saw this from the outside. This is what we call the West Cure Porch. It was originally open on three sides, or two sides. And then when the medical office took over the enclosed portion. So you look on the drawings, this is one of the original windows. It was actually back here in this plane. So when you take this off, you can see that the change in the flooring here. When you take this off, you'll be bringing this window back and putting it into its original location. And the drawings show in a lot of detail how we're going to waterproof this. The siding, the flooring comes up and the membrane goes down and the floor goes back down so that we will be able to protect the materials that are below. This is a good example of the original siding. It has approximately a 3-inch exposure. The actual lap siding pieces are 4.5 inches. And so this is one of two places where you can see what it looked like originally and obviously what we're wanting to take it back to.
Did you say it's 4.5 inches? The profile?
Yes. The piece we have is broken.
Okay.
But that's what we estimate that it was 4.5.
Okay. Yeah.
I should also mention, I didn't mention this before, but we show siding on both the original historic building and also on the southeast addition. The profiles for those two siding elements are different. The 3-inch exposure that we have on the historic building is contrasted with a 4.5-inch exposure on the southeast addition. Our goal here is to be able to differentiate the historic portion from the non-historic portion by showing a different siding profile. In other respects, it'll be quite similar. The trim is similar on both elements. We may do a slightly different color for the siding and the trim on the southeast addition, which is the non-historic part compared to the historic portion. But it'll be very similar in terms of the amount of painting that needs to be done.
So again, and I'm sorry, I know it's on the plans. So the 4.5-inch reveal, that would be a 6-inch,
Or 5.5.
5.5 inch. Okay. All right.
While we're here, you can see that this is a portion of the original beaded siding. And it was covered over time. So our goal is to take this back. This was all open originally, and so was this portion. So essentially, Dr. Trudeau had enclosure from the northwest winds. But other than that, his cure porch was open because the whole idea was you're breathing the cold, clean air. And that's how you're trying to recover your health.
I think so.
Okay. I think unless there's any questions here, or Amy, does Kim or Jack wish to add anything to what I've said? Okay, so let's do the last portion then, which is the construction site access. Would you like us to do that outside, do you think, Kim?
Sure, I think we might as well go on outside.
Okay.
What's up? You guys want to go on out?
You all right? No? No. Got a time to go, right? So we'll walk around to the side and talk a little bit about site access and how you can use the site during construction. The last point that we wanted to talk about today is site access and use of the site. Currently, you saw as we walked around, there were some cars parked on the site. Historic Saranac Lake has the use of some parking spaces in the garage that's associated with the hotel. So the people who work for Historic Saranac Lake and the tenants will be able to use those parking spaces, which will free up the site for you. So that'll give you pretty much access to the full site from either the Church Street entrance, which is where you saw the truck traffic going by, or from the Main Street entrance here. We'd like you to organize your site in a way that is appropriate for the storage of your equipment and materials and protect that. If you think that construction security fencing is something that is important, that would be part of your approach. You're able to use the electricity and water that is in the building. So it'll be a matter of tapping those from the water, from hose bibs on the outside. And the electricity will have to ask your electrician to determine how we tap into the existing panels and get the power that you need. I don't know if it'll give you everything. You might need generators for some elements of the work, but that'll something we'll leave to you. But you're welcome to use the electricity and water that's associated with the building. Sanitary facilities, we ask you to have porta potties on site so that your workers are not needing to go into the building to use the facilities. Construction waste management is obviously going to be important. There's a fair amount of material to take off the site, off the building rather. And so planning for how that leaves the site, and also planning for the two trash containers that you see in the back corner here, which are used by the building. So access to those two existing trash containers is something that we need you to maintain throughout the construction. There's some places where we're doing some excavation for footings and so forth. Called for temporary erosion and sedimentation control, pretty much the standard stuff, but just wanted to point it out. Tim mentioned earlier that there's trees along the Church Street side and that spruce tree that's there that will come down as part of this, and that will give better access to the building and also reduce some of the damage that we think the tree roots are causing to the building now. And then lastly, as you know, because we started in the lab building, that's an important part of where Historic Saranac Lake maintains their offices, but they also maintain them here. And so we want you to be able to maintain pedestrian flow between the two buildings during construction. I mentioned earlier that there's probably going to be an addendum to the construction documents. It will address the oval windows that I mentioned before, and one or two other items. The addendum is not something that you should need to do a lot of research on. We're taking a couple pieces away. We're not adding something that you're going to need to do a lot of research on in order to be able to submit a bid. So we'll get it out as quickly as we can, but it's pretty much going to be straightforward addendum. that's our agenda. Questions that you might have?
Part of your grant shipment,
Yes.
so they require a lot of documents. What's going on.
That's right. And we've
So
called,
something the owner will handle?
no, sorry.
Well, I see us working with the contractor to follow up on that. So we've actually administered almost 80% of the SHPO grant that we have already. So there's about $135,000 left to spend in that grant. And that's the first piece. They of course need to approve the entire project because it's a National Register project. But yeah, we'll be definitely, following up on that paperwork and working with Kim and Jack as well, preservation consultants. But we would be communicating with the contractor, anything that needs to be documented and making sure that it's.
Yeah, so ultimately it's responsibility of the contractor.
Yeah.
So to your point more specifically, when you uncover something, we want you to photograph it. When you're putting something back, we want you to photograph it. The project manual identifies those as some of the record documents that you'll give back to us at the conclusion of construction. So yeah, it's very important. And this building has been here for 125 years. It's covered up with vinyl siding. There's going to be some things underneath that we don't know what they are. So Tim and I will work very closely with you. We're both local here. When you encounter something that needs our attention, we can be here pretty promptly and help you to identify what it is that needs to be done in order that you can keep moving. Our goal is for you to be able to continue your construction activities and for us to assist you in doing that. Okay. Well, I want to thank you all for being with us today. We're very excited about this project, as you can tell, and we hope that you're excited about it as well. We look forward to opening bids on April 30th.
Terry, we have one question in the Zoom chat. Will a list of all attendees be listed in the addendum?
Yes, we can provide a list of all of the attendees.
And I just want to real quick ask everyone who's watching on Zoom, if you could please, if you haven't already, sign in the chat, put your name and the name of your company so that we know who all's attending, since your Zoom names don't necessarily match up. So that's really important if you do that before the end of the meeting. We appreciate it.
Sent out an email. I just got a call yesterday about it. So I haven't received any information on this project as far as documentation or anything.
We have the documents we can email to you. I think Adam probably called you. We went through our list. We didn't. I don't think we had an email for you. So, but if you, I'll be sure to connect with you and get you the documents.
All right. Thank you all for being here, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
No.